Okay, folks, so tomorrow after close, Mara stock is going to be reporting earnings. And for context, Mara's had a few insane quarters, going from $7 to 31, then dumping in half to $14.50, and then back up to a new high at $34.09. Then dumpito back to $14.50, and now she's been trying to climb again. And in today's video, I want to explain whether or not you may start seeing Mara fill in this gap to get back to last cycle's highs. Today, I'm going to give you the full breakdown, and the only thing I ask in return is that you hit that ravishing like button, and also don't forget to subscribe. And of course, as always, if you're the one taking the risk, you got to make sure that you're the one doing the ultimate frisk. Okay, so Mara, lovely Mara. What is Mara for the unacquainted? Well, Mara is Marathon Digital Holdings, and she is one of the leading names in the Bitcoin mining industry, known for her significant hash rates. Oof, gotta love those hashes she's got, and operational efficiency. And the context with Mara here is that she's invested tons and tons of money into making sure that she's competitive post-halving. As you know, network difficulty goes up and rewards go down over time, so Bitcoin mining is going to increasingly become a winner-take-all situation. But in order to understand Mara's pricing, you got to understand Bitcoin's pricing and what's going on there. Bitcoin rallied huge into halving, which has indeed historically been the case, and since it's been overall cooling down, we've dropped about 15% from highs. Now, if you look at the historical data, Bitcoin tends to go up not just before, but after halving as well. It doesn't usually go up immediately after halving, but overall, within a month or two, you start seeing the next wave of uptrending. And if you look at this chart from CoinDesk, it shows July 9th of the 2016 halving cycle, you had that halving, and then you had a sell-off of about 28% over the next 2 weeks, and then Bitcoin started slowly rising and towards new all-time highs. You open up the chart, the sell-off that you saw after that halving ended up being this small little portion here when everybody was fear-mongering that Bitcoin was done forever and that halving destroyed Bitcoin. Well, the overall situation ended up being just this small little dumpito right here, and it ended up going from halving prices at $648 to over 10K, right over that 10K line, and it topped out around 19K. Keep in mind that this is a logarithmic chart, so the magnitudes are a lot more extreme than meets the eye if you're just looking at this chart. So anyways, the point here is that it's not unprecedented to see a sell-off in the immediate aftermath of halving and then to see it pick up a few weeks or months later. Now, obviously, history doesn't have to repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Now, the other thing I want you to keep in mind today with Bitcoin is from a technical standpoint, you're going to need a pretty damn big breakout to fight off the bears. We are in a very aggressive downtrend, and that can be a very self-fulfilling prophecy the longer it lasts. Folks, we need to break out well over this upper trend line, and even then markets aren't going to be convinced, because last time we did that, the stock price just immediately failed afterwards. So you're looking at a breakout into the high 60s before markets are even convinced and can start on the track again to new all-time highs, which we definitely could see this year. But you need to start hitting these technical indications for markets to say, hey, we have enough elevating factors to motivate more positions towards the upside. Now you go over to Mara, and Mara's chart is diverging, which is a very interesting thing. Mara is not in a downward channel right now. She's in the beginning of an uptrending one. And this divergence from Bitcoin is only possible because when Bitcoin was going up, Mara was selling off on company-specific issues. And now that Bitcoin is selling off, some of these company-specific issues are going away, allowing for that gap to close in a little bit. Now, if Mara is going up at the same time that Bitcoin is downtrending, imagine what would happen if Bitcoin starts going up again, which again, history suggests is likely to happen. Next, I want to go through the short squeeze capabilities and the short squeeze setup here. But first, a quick plug. If you're wondering what broker to trade stocks like Mara on, well, I highly recommend that you check out Moomoo. Moomoo offers a ton of features and tools that other brokers charge you for, or that you'll have to go to third parties and pay a monthly fee of an arm and a leg, but it's all included within the Moomoo platform. And at the same time, they're commission free, and there's a lot of things that you're going to need to use, such as data visualization, news alerts, different scanning capabilities, top-notch data, whether you're talking level 2 or options flows. It's got some of the best and most powerful indicators out there, and all of these things are all included under the Moomoo investment app. So definitely recommend checking them out. I'll put the link down below, and because we have a partnership with them, they are offering 10 fractional shares of Magnificent 7 stocks if you use our link down below. If you don't like us, you don't have to use our link, but hey, it's worth it to get those 10 fractional shares. Short squeeze capabilities, let's get back to Mara, lovely Mara. So crypto miners have a lot of large risk factors, which makes them very, very, very easy shorts. And shorts attacked Mara pretty damn aggressively during its downtrend, its brutal downtrend, and then during the revival of Bitcoin, well, Mara totally punched them back in the face. But anyway, short interest right now is at around 20%. 20%. Short selling, you got to think about it as artificial dilution, essentially creating shares that don't exist out of thin air. And when you have some 1/5 of shares out there being artificially created by short sale, and it creates the situation where if the stock jumps and shorts cover, you could see somewhere around 20% of the trading float just all of a sudden up and disappear in a rebuying storm, which could cause the price to go up a lot, and that is a very, very nice thing to see. And in terms of the off-exchange short volume ratio, it's at about 42%. What does that mean? Well, oftentimes short sellers like to play this little game where they'll go and they'll short something aggressively on the public market so that people can see the stock price dump, and then they'll rebuy back on the off-exchanges so that people don't see the positive price increase. But the thing is, there's not unlimited liquidity. There's not unlimited shares on the private market. So the minute that all of a sudden a stock price starts rallying aggressively and it goes up 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% in a very short time span, well, what happens to these short sellers? Well, all of a sudden they have to rush to the public market in order to cover their short positions, in order to buy back shares to close their short positions. And that's when you get the beautiful short squeeze setup. That said, when there's big money involved, be aware that there's big tricks involved. It's very common, hypothetically, that you'll see hedge funds trade both sides of the move, buying in at lows, inducing retail traders to buy in as the price goes up, and then dumping at highs, and then shorting aggressively as media pumps out bad press releases focusing on nonsense. Pretty much the entire stock market is all a big trap to try to take your money. So you got to make sure that you're smart enough to protect yourself, because you're not going to outsmart them, but you can outrun them and run home with your profits. Now I want to move on and talk about Mara, the company itself, and recent progress they've made. So take a look at this press report that came out a couple of weeks ago. So Marathon Digital Holdings increases 2024 hash rate target to 50 exahash. Now I'm a simple-minded guy. I like to think of hash rate as horsepower on a car. The more horsepower a car has, the faster it can go. And Bitcoin mining in that sense is like a big car race. You have all these different Bitcoin mining companies all racing, and in order to keep your place in line, well, you got to invest in having more and more horsepower, because if everybody else is doing it, well, they're just going to pass you. And in order to gain ground, you don't have to just invest to maintain your position, but you have to invest even more than everybody else is doing so that you can gain ground on your competition and get more rewards, get a bigger trophy, aka mine more Bitcoin. So Mara started 2024 with a hash rate of 24.7, and their new target is 50. And they've been making strategic acquisitions to make this happen. The CEO said, quote, "Given the amount of capacity we have available following our recent acquisitions and the amount of hash rate we have access to through current machine orders and options, we now believe it is possible for us to double the scale of Marathon's mining operations in 2024 and achieve 50 exahash by the end of the year." Now, just to show you the trend of improvement and the success they've had, if you look at the energized hash rate at the end of April, they reported 29.9. A year ago, it was at 14. And again, going back to the car racing analogy, Mara needs to do this in order to maintain her dominance in the car race. She has to invest enough to maintain her spot, maintain her production levels, but also invest even more to grow her production levels. And Mara has gotten a lot of criticism for investing hand over fist and fist over hand in her infrastructure, but you could see that it's paying off here. And quite frankly, I think these April numbers were a little bit low. Mara had a little bit of a dip over February, and there's a few little difficulties here and there, and I think they're going to be watered out in the coming months. So I actually think she gained even more ground than this if you look at the overall trend. But we'll see some more information on that tomorrow. So earnings, they're coming out tomorrow. What should we expect here? Well, you got to understand that going into earnings, Mara just got into the S&P Small Cap 600, which gives management some room to brag and talk about all the capital that might be allocating its way into Mara as more and more people wake up to the setup. And if you look over at Zacks Investment, they say the company is expected to report a 166.7% year-over-year increase in post-quarterly earnings per share and 279.2% in revenue as compared to the year-ago quarter. Now, Q1 was a very hot time for Bitcoin and a very, very hot time for crypto mining. And you didn't really get much of a dip in the industry until April, and April was, of course, Q2. So Q1 ended March 31st, and the market kind of topped out March 31st. So from that standpoint, Q1 should be incredibly solid. But I believe that guidance is going to be a lot more cautious, and that could be what really spooks markets. The management is looking at Bitcoin just like we're looking at Bitcoin, and they can't say whether or not it's going to go up or down, because that would be predicting and promising, and they're going to get sued. Whether or not they believe Bitcoin's going to go up or down throughout the rest of the year, I believe they're going to take a more cautious and guarded approach, and, well, guidance might be a little bit low, which could certainly freak out markets. And of course, as we know, with the short squeeze setup, it's very, very easy for financial media to start pumping out negative PR about any sort of small line item on Mara's earnings. And then all of a sudden, retail's like, okay, well, I believe what the financial media said, so I have to sell this. And then, of course, a few months later, when it's going back up, they're going to be like, okay, time to buy. And the short sellers have now flipped the script. But the point here is it's very, very difficult to predict. In my opinion, it's a fool's errand to try to predict what's going to happen on earnings, and then even worse, try to predict how the stock is going to react to earnings. In my view, there's a million different personalities and characters involved here, both at the company, at the short seller level, in terms of the retail space. It's just impossible to predict. But practically, what I will say is that I believe Bitcoin will short to medium term continue its uptrend. I believe Mara will follow that. And that thesis motivates my opinion that whether Mara sells off tomorrow on earnings or whether she rallies, she'll inevitably find her way back to these cycle highs in the low to mid 30s and hopefully later break out far past those levels. And at the same time, since we can't control pricing, my view is that if that thesis is proven wrong or Mara decides to dilute the boat again, I would plan with strategic stop losses, a strategic risk management plan before you take any kind of position. If you ever think about going into a position without a stop loss, without some form of thought out risk management, well, you got to ask yourself, would I ever go on a roller coaster without a seatbelt? And if your answer is yes to that, fine, go ahead, do it without a stop loss. But if your answer is no, then certainly have a stop loss. Anyways, folks, that caps off today's video. Make sure to let us know your thoughts on Mara down below. Do you think she's going to go up? Do you think she's going to go down? Do you think it's a little bit more complicated? Are we right? Are we wrong? What is your opinion? We love hearing from you. And of course, make sure to take advantage of your 10 free fractional shares of Magnificent 7 stocks when signing up with Moomoo in the first link down below. Excellent platform. You're going to love them. We'll see you in the next video.